What's up guys, Andre here, and today I'd like to build out this to-do app using React. I've been tasked with a project that requires some React, so I thought I'd build out this to-do app to get familiar with it. Now, as the title suggests, I'm going to be approaching this as someone with vue.js experience, and I'm going to refer to the to-do app we built in Vue. So check out that video if you haven't seen it yet. Prior to building this app, I have no experience in React. So apologies in advance if I'm not making use of best practices. If you have experience with Vue.js, the transition to React isn't very difficult. As long as you understand the concept of building out your app using components, then you should be good to go. My quick opinion on React coming from Vue is that it's very similar to Vue, except without all the magic. So no single file components, no directives like vmodel, vif, v4, as it relies heavily on just plain JavaScript. So here's the to-do app we built in Vue. You can do everything you think a to-do app should do, like adding, editing, removing, filtering, checking all, and we'll be doing the same thing in React. So the idea came from this to-do MVC project, which builds out the same to-do app in multiple libraries and frameworks. And here is the React one. Okay, so let's get started. So the easiest way is to use Create React App, which is a CLI tool which helps with scaffolding and setup. So let's go ahead and use that. So you can npm install -g create React app and install it globally so you can have it locally on your machine, or you can actually use this tool so without installing it globally. So just do npx create React app and then the name of your app. So we'll do it that way. npx create React app and we'll call it to do React. And just give it a second here. Okay, that's done. So let's cd into it to do React and then yarn start, or you can do npm start. We'll stick with npm. So you can see it opened up this browser tab with a default React app. So let's go ahead and open it in our code editor. Let me just open it up. Let me just rerun that. Okay, so let's take a look around at what's going on here. I have my Vue one in the background because we'll be referring to that. But here is our React app. So there is a single HTML file, like how all single page app works. And it mounts itself here to this div with an ID of root. The main entry point is here in src index.js, and it's rendering this app component on this div with an ID of root, which is this one. So here's the main component. It's importing everything it needs, and here is the render function that returns the HTML that you see here. So if we change this, it will reload automatically, and here is our starting point. So in React, components are just JavaScript files, whereas in Vue, they are .vue single file components. And in React, everything is just JavaScript. So even the markup that's returned in Vue, we have this nice template section where it's just HTML with some directives like velse or v4, which is really nice. But here in React, we are returning markup, which is pretty much HTML, but with some changes, and that is what JSX is. So a few things to keep in mind when you're using JSX. Number one, you can't use class. You have to use class name because class is a reserved word in JavaScript for classes. So make sure you use class name. Number 2, make sure you close tags. I don't think you have to, but if, like for example, if I take this out, you'll see that VS Code complains. So make sure you self-close tags that don't require closing tags. What else? Everything inside of curly braces is just JavaScript. So if I do 3 plus 2, plus 2, that should be 5 because it's just interpreting it as JavaScript. There you go. And you can also, you can see for the image source, it's just referring to this logo that was imported. You can do it the old-fashioned way too if you just refer to a file, but Webpack is doing its magic here, and you can just import images like this if you're using the import syntax from up here. For CSS, there are several ways you can handle CSS in React. I'm just going to stick with the most obvious way, which is using a dedicated CSS file, which is here in app.css, and we just import it using this import syntax over here, and Webpack will take care of the rest. If you watched my Vue video, you saw that I used Sass because I prefer Sass and just some of its conveniences like nesting selectors. You can do that too in React, but it's not as easy as dropping it in Vue. So I'm just going to stick with normal CSS for this video. Okay, so to start, I'm going to grab all of the CSS we have for this and just drop it in our React app so I don't have to redo it. So where's our CSS is just down here because in Vue it's all within one file. And like I said, I was using Sass here, so we won't import this now. But I'm just going to grab all of this and I'm going to change it to just vanilla CSS because we can't do this stuff in normal CSS. So I'm just going to copy this, go back here, put it down here, and I'm just going to make some changes behind the scenes. Okay, so I've added all the CSS. I also added this to-do container, and I'm using it here just so everything is centered. And here's how it looks. Pretty much the same, I just removed some stuff. So let's go into our to-do app and just start pasting markup in here. I'll do the text box and then I'll do the rest behind the scenes, just so we have a static site in place, and then we'll start adding some JavaScript interactivity. Okay, so let's start with that text box. And since I already pasted the CSS, everything should look good. So here it is. Where's the input? It's right here. I'm just going to grab this, go back into our app, and I'm going to remove this. And it's going to paste that in. And obviously this is Vue related, so we'll remove that. And this is class name. And what else is it complaining about? Oh yeah, we have to close the tag. Okay, so let's see how that looks. And that looks pretty much the same as our other app. Cool. So like I said, I'm just going to paste the rest of the markup in, and it's all just going to be static, and we'll work from there. Okay, so I added all the extra markup in. Again, it's all just static. There's no JavaScript in here yet. And one more thing to note I forgot to mention is comments are like this in JSX. So make sure you remember that. Just use your editor. I just use command / and it automatically comments for you. Okay, so for this video I'm just going to be putting everything into one component, and then maybe in future videos I'll separate them out into different components. So the first thing we want to do is get our state in our app. So our state is an array of to-dos. So we can do that in several ways. We can either put it in a constructor up here, or we can just define our own property. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. So after the render function, so the render function ends here, it's going to add a new property called state. So state is going to be an object. And let's just put in a to-dos array in here. That's just hard-coded initially. So it's an array, sorry, of objects. So object 1 is going to be ID 1, title, finish React screencast, and completed is false and editing is false. Okay, so I added another one here. Okay, our app still works. You should definitely make use of React DevTools, just like Vue has its own DevTools. And you can see the state right here. So here's what we hard-coded. And yeah, we'll be making use of React DevTools a lot. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just have these to-dos render out on the page here. So in Vue, we make use of the v-for directive to iterate over arrays. So how do we do that in React? So there's no directives, so we just make use of JavaScript. So let's go up here. And right here is where it's just hard-coded for now, but I have two items, one here and one here. And we want to loop over these. So how do we do that in React? We just use a map function. So just do this dot state dot to-dos to get our to-dos array, and then we can map over it using the map function. And from there we can grab the to-do and the index, and let's just print something out. So arrow, let's just print out a p tag. So p, sorry, okay, to do, sorry, to do dot title, like that, and close the p tag. And I think I'm missing a closing. Yeah, okay, so let's see if that works. And there you go, it's rendering out our to-dos. So that's how you iterate over a list instead of using v-for in React. Now we can take this markup and stick it in here. So I believe this is for one item. Yeah, so this. So let me just grab this and replace what we need. I should definitely make use of prettier, so my formatting is correct all the time. As you can see, I spend a lot of time just formatting my code. So yeah, I should take a look at that. So this would be to-do.title. All right, see if that works. Cool. And we no longer need this one. Okay, if you look at our DevTools in the console, you'll see that there is a warning here. It says each child should have a unique key prop. So the same thing goes in Vue. If you don't specify a key, then it's going to complain. It actually catches it in the editor in Vue, but it doesn't catch it in React. Maybe you have to add a linter or something, I don't know. Still a noob, but we can add a key like this. So just add a prop here. So key equals todo.id. And that should get rid of that warning. And there's one more warning here saying this should be class name. Cool. There's a whole bunch of warnings. 3312. Let's just find all of them. Yeah, sorry, I pasted it in from Vue, and I didn't change it. I think that's it. Is that it? Okay, cool. Okay, now let's work on adding to-dos. So we want to type in something here, press the enter key, and we want it to show up in this list. So the first thing we need to take care of is event handlers. So let's put a new event handler on this input. So in Vue, we have this key up and a very handy, like a parameter that allows you to enter what key you're listening for. I really like that feature in Vue, but unfortunately, at least not that I know of, there's nothing in React, so we still got to do it the JavaScript way. So we can just add a new event listener on key up, and that will defer to this method that we will add to do. So in Vue, you don't have to specify this keyword whenever you're in your template, but in React you do. So make sure you do that. And let's make a new method, add to do. So let's just add it down here after our state. So let's just do add to do, and it's going to take in the event because we need that to listen for the enter key. And for now, let's just see if it's firing that or listening on the key up event. See working, and see if that works. Okay, so it works. We want it to only work on enter. So we can listen for the key code, or we can just do this. So we just listen for event.key and check if that's equal to enter. And now this should only work if we press the enter key, which is what we want. So, okay, but when I press enter, working, okay. Okay, so in Vue, we have this vModel directive, which syncs this input with this data property. So we have new to do in our data right here, and it syncs it on change, which is actually really nice. Some nice magic that Vue does for you. But unfortunately, we have to do that manually in React. So for this specific case, we don't really need to sync this text box with state. You can if you want, but I'm just going to make use of refs because it's a bit easier and that's all we need it for. So let me show you how to make a refs in React. So let me just specify the name of the ref is to do input, and we just do react.createRef. And then we will specify that ref in our input tag. So up here, where's input? Right here, I'll put it right here. So ref equals this dot to do input. Now, if we go back here, we have a reference to that. So we can just do console log this dot to do input. So let's see what that gives us. Let's see what, hello, and it gives us an error. So I just want to point out what the problem is here. The problem is this is null right now, and we need this to refer to the component. So whenever you make a custom method in React and you need to reference this, we have to change how this is defined. Let me just console log this here and show you. So this should be undefined. Once we go here, yeah, so undefined. But if we console log this in the render function, right here, it should work. There you go. It's referring to the app component, which is what we need. So to fix that, there's a few ways you can do it, but from what I've seen, the most common way is to just change how you define your custom methods like this. So just make it a property and make it an arrow function like this. And now, if I console log this, it should be the app component. And it is cool. So for every custom function, I'm going to be defining it like this, just so we have access to this. And now this should work. Okay, so we have this current property, so let's console log that. That should just be the actual DOM element. Yep, it is. And to get the value, we just do .value. So that should be hello. Awesome. So I'm just going to save that to a variable. Say input value, or just to do input. It's fine. Okay. And now what do we want to do? So we have reference to what the user's typing in. Let's see what we did in Vue. So add to do. So all we did was push to the to-dos array, and that's it. So yeah, if you just think of state as the data properties that we define in Vue for our React app. But in Vue is less strict with mutating these properties. As in, by less strict, I mean you can do whatever you want with them. You can mutate them if you want. But in React, you cannot mutate state directly. You have to call a setState function to do it for you. So if you look at the documentation, it's kind of small. See if we can make use of this setState. See if we can find anything. So yeah, this is how you use it. You have to call this function, and there's a reference to previous state and props. We're not making use of props here, but we'll do it like this. So yeah, so the parameter is a function that returns what you're trying to change. So let me just show you what I mean. I'm copying that, and we'll do that. Okay, so let me just put this on its own line. Obviously, we don't want that. And as you see in the documentation, previous state is a reference to the previous state. It should not be directly mutated. So here's what we can do. We can make a new copy of that because we need to push to this array, and .push mutates the array. So we can just do previous state .todos to get those to-dos. And now we can push to this new copy that we have. So what do we want to push? We want to push the ID. Right now I'm hard coding it, so there's only 2. I'll hard code 3 for now, and then we'll make a new state for the current ID. The title is this variable we have up here. So to do input, and then completed is just false. Let's see if, okay, so we have this new to-dos, and where we return this object is the state we want to update. So to-dos is what we want to update, and we want to update that with this new to-dos over here. So that should work. Just for 1, because I'm hard coding 3. So let's just try that. Sorry, that's the Vue one. React. Okay. Testing. And there you go, it works. If I try again, I think it's going to fail because, yeah, well, it works, but same key. We'll take a look at that in a second. You can also just remove this. For ES6, if it's the same name, you can just remove it. So I'm just going to do this. Cool. That should still work. Awesome. Okay. Okay, let's not hardcode 3, and let's make a new state property for the ID of the added to-do. So ID for to-do, and I'm going to add that to state here. So ID for to-do starts at 3, and we'll increment it every time we add. So I'm going to make another property here, ID for to do, and that's going to be what it was before, so previous state, ID for to do plus 1. And now we also want to update the state, so we can do ID for to do here too. Okay, see if this works with multiple. 1, 2, okay, so it works. Let's make sure that we clear this out after we enter it, so we can just do that. After the set state, we can just do this dot to do input dot current dot value is an empty string. Cool. Okay, cool. And if you want to see the state growing, we just go into React DevTools, and you can see it growing here as we add. Okay, let's make sure we can't add blank ones, because right now I just press enter and you see it entered that blank to do. We don't want that. So we can just do a check here. So if to do input dot trim dot length, if it's 0, then we just want to early return, and that shouldn't add blank ones. Let's try that out. I'm pressing enter here and it doesn't add it. Cool. Okay, so now let's work on delete. So we want to click on this and we want to delete this specific to do. So let's add a event handler on the remove item. So it's going to be on click equals, let's call it this dot delete to do. Okay, let's make a function down here. So I'm just going to grab this and just put it right here. And we don't need the event, so let's just do it like that. And it's just console log. See if that's working. Oops, sorry, forgot to change the name. Okay, so deleting works. But we need a reference to the index that's being clicked. So we can take that in here. So index, just console log index. And then up here, we can just pass in the index here, because we're mapping over it and we have a reference to it here. So let's see what happens there. So as you can see, it automatically called that function, and we don't want that to happen. In Vue, I think I called it remove to do. Yeah, Vue is smart enough to not call it, when you're referring to it like this, it's smart enough to not call it right when the app loads. But in React, we have to specify that we don't want to call it right away. So how do we do that? There's a few ways to do it, but the way I'm going to do it is just by using an arrow function in here. So we're going to take in the index, and we're going to do that. And that should work, hopefully. So it looks like that's the event. So we might have to pass in the event here for this to work. See if that works. Sorry, I think it's just like this. Yeah, we just have to pass in the event, and then we don't need this. Does this work? Okay, now we're getting the index that we want. So yeah, so we need an arrow function that takes in the event and then just defer it to the method we want to call with the parameter. So yeah, that does it. Cool. So now all we have to do, if we look in here in our Vue app, All we did was call splice. So let's go back into our React app, and we need to do another set state. Let me just copy this and delete this. We can keep that, and we can just do the splice right here. So to-dos.splice. So we have the index, and we just want to replace one of those. And now we push the to-dos to the state, and that should do it. See if this works. Awesome, it does. Adding another one. Cool. Let's delete them. Awesome. Okay, now let's work on checking to-dos. Let me just refresh this. So we want to check it, and we want to update the state of this particular to-do. So let's go to the checkbox up here, right here, and let's define an onChange event. And that is going to refer to a custom function that we'll make, and it's going to call this check to do. And we want to take in the to do because we need to update that. We need the index, and we need the event. So let's go ahead and define that. So I'm just going to grab this. It's almost the same. And I'm going to check to do. It takes in the to do, index, and the event. And it is going to set state, and we just need to set the to do coming in to the opposite. So to do dot completed. Okay, and now we can splice, but we want to replace that one with that updated to do. And again, we are updating our to-dos right here. And that should do it. So it's not going to do the line 3 yet because we have to do some conditional checks on the classes, but it should update the state. So if I go to 1, completed is false, see if it changes to true. It does. Cool. False, true. This one, true. Okay, cool. Okay, so for that line through, let's add a checked class here. I think it's called checked. No, it's called completed. Yeah, it's called completed, and that should just put a line through. There you go. So we want to add this class conditionally depending on if this to-do is completed. So how do we do that? We can use a ternary here and just check. So I'm just going to do this. And by default, it should have this one. So I'm just going to do it like that. And then I'm going to concatenate and just use a ternary here. So to do, if to do is completed, then we can add the completed class. But if it's not, then we add nothing. See if that works. I think I need brackets here, so maybe if I add brackets, that should work. So right here. Okay, so let me check it. There you go, so it works. If you use Vue, let's see how we did it in Vue here. We have this syntax for conditionally checking classes, which I really like. But unfortunately, there's nothing built into React like this. But there is a package that pretty much does the same thing. It's called, I think it's called class names. Yeah, so this one. So let's pull this in and use it. So I'm going to grab that. And then paste it in, sorry. Okay, let me run my app again. And there seems to be an error. I've gotten this a few times already, and I just did an npm install, and that fixed it. Weird. Okay, let me try again. npm start. Okay. So now, where's my code? Back to our React app. If you want to do it that way, which I actually prefer, that's why I'm doing it here. I'm just going to comment this out. And let's make a new div. Let's give a class name of, sorry, I have to install it first. So just import star as class names from class names. And now to use it, we can just do pretty much what we do in Vue. So we want the to-do item label, so that's true. And we want the completed class if to-do is completed, to-do.completed. And that should produce the same result. Oh, sorry. No, I need to call the class names function, which is available to us now, and close that. Yeah, that should do it. And I have to call to-do title in here. To-do.title. Okay. Sorry, this should be an object. And here too. And that should work now. Okay. And it does. Awesome. Okay, now let's work on editing our to-dos. So if we double click, we should be able to edit our to-do. So let me just go into my Vue app and let me just grab this. And that's all I need here. And let me just put it right after the input box here. So I'm just going to paste that in. Make sure we close it and put a closing tag. And this is Vue specific. We don't need that. Sorry, this should go under the label right here. So the way this is going to work is only one of these will show at a time. And once we double click the label, then there's an editing property on the to-dos. I'll set editing to true and we'll only show the text box. If you look at how we did that in Vue, you can see we have this vif and it just checks if it's editing. And if it's not, show the label. If it is, then show the text box. And Vue makes it a bit easier because vmodel does a lot of binding for us. But we're going to have to do that manually in React. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is just set the editing property on the to-do to true once we double click it. So let's make a new event here. So right here. Actually, let me put it on a separate line so it's easier to read. And this one is going to be on double click. So usually it's dbl click, but React decided to name it more semantically. So on double click equals, and we're going to call a custom method called edit to do. It's going to take in the to do, index, and the event. And let's go ahead and make that. I'm going to copy this. And edit to do. and we don't need this. And all I'm doing here is setting the editing to true. And then this is going to update it, and this will update the state. Okay, see if that works. Let's check out the first one and see if this changes to true once we double click. And it does, cool. So now let's conditionally show each one of these based on if that editing field is true or false. So in Vue, we just have to use vif and velse, and this will render it based on that condition. It's very neat and tidy in React. Let's go back up to our render function. So we want, actually, let me put this on its own line. This too, like that. So we want this block to render if we're not editing, and we want this block to render if we are editing. So there are a few ways to do this in React. The way I'm going to do it is inline. So inline conditional rendering. So to do that, we state the condition we want. So in this case, not to do editing. And we just add the AND operator. And then we can close this. Oops, edit ing. And for the other case, we just want the opposite. So just to do editing. And we can close that out. There you go. Now this should appear, and it does, cool. So we don't have the value in there yet, but we will add that. You can do, right now, these are just two conditionals. I'm basically doing if not true, and then I'm doing another conditional for if true. You can do a ternary here if you want, but I feel like a ternary is very unreadable, so I'm just going to stick to this way. And we want to add this autofocus attribute to this, and what that's going to do is once it renders, then it's going to focus it. And we need that because if we don't have that, then we'll run into issues with the blur event, which we need in a second. So double click, this should be focused. And it is, because you can see the cursor there. Cool. Okay, so let's have the value of the to-do item in here. So let me just put this on its own line. And we can give it a default value of to-do.title. So let's see. Okay, cool. Now we want to set the editing property to off once we remove focus. So the event for that is on blur. So on blur, I'm going to call another custom method. So it's going to take in the event. And it's called this.doneEdit. It's going to take in the to-do, index, and the event. So let's go ahead and define that method, doneEdit. It's down here. I'm just going to grab this, doneEdit. And it's going to set it to false here. And we also have to, okay, let's just leave it like this for now. And we'll continue to add changes. Let's just see if the on blur works. So if I remove it, will the text box remove? And it does, cool. So on blur, we also want to commit the changes that were added here. So if there's a change and we blur, then we want to commit those changes. So here we can set the title. Let's just hard code it for now. It's going to set it to hard code just to show you. There you go. So that worked, but we need the actual thing that the user typed in. So to get that, let me just comment this out for a second. And I'm going to console log it outside of the set state. It should be event.target.value. So that should log what the user typed. So changed and blur. There you go. So it logged it. Do I have a class? Yeah, sorry, I keep doing that. I'm sure everyone who is just starting with React does the same thing. Try it again. Okay. So yeah, you saw it log there. Once we blur. Okay, cool. But when I move it in here to the set state, then it's not going to work anymore. Change, blur, then yeah, we get this error. So in order to persist the event in this set state function, we have to call event.persist here. And now that should work. So change, blur, and that works. So we can just use this and take this out, and we can use that here. Okay. So let's see if this commits. Change, blur, and it changes. Cool. Now we also want the same behavior if we press enter here instead of just blurring off. So let's go ahead and add an event listener for the on key up enter. So right here we can add on key up, and it's pretty much the same thing as this. So let's grab this. But we want to listen for the enter key, which we did up here. So we can do it inline here. Show you what I mean, because we're going to use it for another case as well. So if event.key equals enter, then yeah, do this. Sorry, there should be event, and then there should be an arrow function. This, and then we no longer need this. And we need one more closing tag here. So let's see if this works. Finish React screencast now, and it works. Cool. Okay, so let's add a feature where we can escape out, and if we type some stuff and press escape, we can not commit the changes that we type. So if you press escape here, it should revert back. So let's go ahead and listen in for the escape key. So here we can do else if event.key equals escape. Then we can call another custom method that will call cancel edit. Okay, let's go ahead and make that. So let me just copy this again and make a new one called cancel edit. Cancel. Okay, so we can erase this. Erase this. So the title has to go back to a previous state when we started editing the to-do. So we'll make this in our state properties. We'll make a new one called before edit cache. Let's go ahead and make that in our state. Just put it here, before edit cache, and it's defaulted to an empty string. And let's go to our edit to do, and right here we can also set before edit cache to be to-do.title. So right when the user double clicks it, it saves that in the cache. So we can revert back to it if we have to. So let's see if this works. Finish React screencast, change, but if I press escape, it should go back. And that doesn't work. Did I forget something here? Okay, I think yeah, it's not ESC, it should be escape. Sorry about that. Okay, let's try it again. Now if I hit escape, it should go back. Awesome. But if I press enter, that should commit. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's also make it so the user can't commit a empty string. Right now we can. So if we go into our done edit, we can just do a check right here to check if it's an empty string, and if it is, then just set the title to that before edit cache we just made. So if event.target.value.trim.length, if it's 0, that means it's an empty string, and the title should be that cache we just made. And let's try that. So if I do this and I try to do that, it should go back. I'm pressing enter here. Sorry, this should be in an else block right here. Okay. And delete that, press enter. Okay, so we're good here. So I think I'm going to stop it there. I wanted to try and fit everything into one video, but this is taking longer than I expected. So I'll do the rest in a part 2. We still have all of these features, the check all, the filters, the clear completed to take care of. So we'll do that in the next video. So hopefully you got a good overview of how React compares to Vue and an understanding of how React works on a basic level. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.